Well, hey, and welcome back to The Awakening. I'm so glad that you're here. This week, we are going to be in Acts chapter 5 through 9, and we are talking about being awakened to faith. Today, we're going to be in Acts chapter 5, and I'm going to do a little side by side comparison for you of two different responses to seeing the power of God moving among people. And the goal that God's heart for us is that when we see his power at work through the Holy Spirit, that we would be awakened to faith, that we would grow in our dependence, full dependence on him, and in our awe and wonder of the way that he's moving. So today we're going to start in verse 1 actually, and I'm going to do a side-by-side comparison just like I do every week. I encourage you to read the whole chapter, ask the Holy Spirit to breathe on this and illuminate the things that he wants to reveal to your heart today. So starting in verse 1, we're going to see this story of a couple named Ananias and Sapphira. Ananias and Sapphira are part of the church there. They had given their lives to the Lord, and they are part of this community who are moving in unity. They are selling things so that they can take care of one another. And this couple, they decide to sell their land. And unfortunately, they had gotten caught up in fear. And so their fear of not having enough caused them to choose to keep for themselves part of the proceeds for the land. And here's the deal, there's nothing wrong with that. As we're going to see, there's nothing wrong with them choosing even to not sell the land, but what the choice that they made was in response to fear that if they gave 100% of the proceeds from their land, that they wouldn't have enough. So they decided to keep part of it. But here's the mistake that they made. They took the money that they chose to give, but they lied about the money. They told Peter and the church, this is everything. We sold our land and we want to give 100% of the proceeds. Peter receives a word of knowledge from the Holy Spirit, which is one of the ways that he moves in power. He receives a word of knowledge, just like Ananias and Sapphira are deceiving the Holy Spirit here. They have chosen to lie, and he rebukes them for this. And here's what I want to point out, starting in verse 3. Peter said, after he receives this word of knowledge that Ananias has lied about the proceeds of the land, he says, Ananias, why have you let Satan fill your heart? You lied to the Holy Spirit and you kept some of the money for yourself. The property was yours to sell or not to sell as you wished, and after selling it, the money was also yours to give away. How could you do a thing like this? You weren't lying to us, but to God. As soon as Ananias heard these words, he fell to the floor and died. Everyone who heard about it was terrified. I guess so. So it goes on to tell us the rest of the story that his wife Sapphira walks in, is faced with the same question. She also lies, saying that they gave all of the money. Peter says, how could the two of you even think of conspiring to test the Spirit of the Lord like this? The young men who buried your husband are just outside the door, and they will carry you out too. Instantly she fell to the floor and died. When the young men came in and saw that she was dead, they carried her out and buried her beside her husband. Great fear gripped the entire church and everyone else who heard what had happened. So what I want us to see in these two verses, when Ananias and Sapphira both die, what causes them to die is the revelation of what they have done. They are gripped with the fear of the Lord, and it causes them to drop dead. Then we see that the church, everyone who heard about what happened, they're gripped with fear. But there's something I want us to see. This word fear, as I was reading this passage, the Holy Spirit highlighted that word fear. Anytime he highlights a word, I go to find what the original Greek or Hebrew meaning of that word was. This word fear in verse 11 is the word phobos. This word fear is not what I think about. When I think about being gripped with fear, I think about being ruled with anxiety and like a fear of being afraid. But in reality, this word phobos, it is this like the utter dread of the possibility of displeasing God. So their fear is not like an anxiety fear. This fear of the Lord is like, gosh, we don't want to do anything that could possibly displease the heart of God. This is the kind of fear that when people see the move of God, when they see what he does in a group of people and through his signs and wonders and through miracles, in response, they give their lives, they give everything in response to what he's given to them. And that's what it looks like to be awakened to faith. It's not this fear is not a fear of the Lord that's not healthy. This fear is, I don't want to do anything that would displease the one who gave everything so that I could be his. And it encourages them to walk in even more unison, more in step with the Holy Spirit, so that they are pleasing to the Father, not out of duty or obligation, but in response to what he's done for them. So that's response number one. It's this phobos, like utter distress over displeasing the God of the universe who gave everything to us so that we could be his. It's a fear that says, I don't want anything but you. I want you to come and move in power in my life, and I want you to have everything. The second response we're going to see from the religious leaders of the day. So in the next section, verses 12 through, you can go down a little ways there, that we're seeing that the apostles are, because of this response, this fear of the Lord that says, I don't want to displease the Lord. I want to walk in faith, knowing that he is moving in power. They get to see signs and wonders. Miracles are being performed. In verse 16, it says, crowds come from the villages around Jerusalem because of their faith being awakened. People are bringing their sick and those possessed by evil spirits. And it says, all are healed. Not some, not a great majority, all. And I underlined that word, all are healed, in response to what the disciples are walking in. They are walking in faith and in the power of the Holy Spirit. But here's what I want us to see. The high priest, the leaders of the day, they are getting to see the very same thing that everyone else is seeing. All are healed. They got to hear about Ananias and Sapphira. And yet here's their response to the move of the power of God. It says, the high priest, this is verse 17, the high priest and his officials, who were Sadducees, were filled with jealousy. So these men, they're seeing the very same move of God. They are hearing the very same stories. They have actually seen, there's a passage that we're going to read later on in the study. They've seen with their very own eyes the miracles that are being performed through the power of the Holy Spirit. And rather than being awakened to faith, their hearts are awakened to jealousy. And this word jealousy, it's a jealousy over losing the control and the power that they had in their community. The same thing is possible for us. We may not be jealous of seeing what the Lord's doing for someone else, but we may be jealous over desiring power and control in our own lives, rather than saying, Lord, I want to give you everything. I don't want to do anything to displease you. I'm jealous over my life, and so I want to maintain control rather than giving full control and access to my life to you. So today we've got an opportunity to say, Lord, I want to be awakened to faith, or I want to be awakened to control. And it's my prayer that today we will choose to be awakened to faith, that we will choose to be awakened to the type of the fear of the Lord that is a response that says, I cannot imagine doing anything to displease the God of the universe who gave everything so that I could be his. So I want to hear from you. What do you see as you read this passage today? Share it with us. Hope you have a great day, and we'll see you back tomorrow.